politics now, specifically progressive 2016 election. On your screen is Cenk Uygur, who is host of The Young Turks and founder and CEO of the TYT Network. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having me.
What's a Young Turk?
Well, Young Turks is the largest online news show in the world. We're now a network, the TYT Network, 30 different channels, largest network on YouTube, about 120 million views on YouTube and Facebook per month. But to your actual question of what a Young Turk is, it's a young progressive looking to overthrow the established system. And that's what we're looking to do here. I think Washington is enormously corrupt. So does our audience. So does 91% of Americans. So we're looking to change that system.
So once you overthrow the system, as you want to do, what are the top policy issues for progressives? Talk about 2016 for me.
Yeah. Well, okay, as things stand today, the number one issue by a landslide is getting money out of politics. Because until you get money out of politics, we have effectively lost our democracy. Princeton did that study between 1981 and 2002. They studied 1,800 policy issues and said that public opinion has zero effect on policy. If it has zero effect on policy, that means we don't live in a democracy anymore at the national level. People think they're like, wow, that's a big, strong statement. It has zero effect. When public opinion has zero effect on policy, that means that it's not a democracy. That's something else. Now, at the state level, it's a little different, actually. Democracy does exist there. So getting money out of politics is imperative. Otherwise, you can't win on any other issue. You're not functioning in a society where voters count, right? Now, once you get beyond that issue, then, of course, there's a whole host of other things. Net neutrality, luckily, giant corporations and incredibly rich people came to our side, and we won on that. For the moment being, and then you got to fix the banks. The banks have a pipeline into the Fed. That system is intensely corrupt, and that would be the next thing up on our priority list.
Put the phone numbers on the bottom of the screen for our guests as we talk politics here, and we have separate lines for Republicans and Democrats and Independents. We'll get to your calls in just a couple of minutes. How would you describe a progressive?
A progressive, someone who believes in change. And who believes that we can all expand freedom together. So conservatives have oftentimes taken the word freedom and co-opted it. But in reality, progressives have fought for freedom, whether it was for blacks in America, women in America, gays in America. We are for expanding liberty. Conservatives, unfortunately, throughout American history, have fought against liberty. Luckily, they've almost always lost in that.
What do you think of Hillary Clinton? Because if you look at the Daily Beast, you'll see a piece recently where there's a sketch of Mrs. Clinton, the former Secretary of State and now declared presidential candidate, and it says, left to Hillary, you're a phony.
Left of Hillary?
Left to Hillary.
To Hillary.
Left
oh, yes,
to Hillary.
Yes. Oh, it's enormously true. Yes. I mean, she was just giving speeches for a couple $100,000 to Goldman Sachs telling them that they're misunderstood. She's on the board of Walmart for a long period of time, telling us how multinational corporations are so lovely for us. Pro-banks, pro-war. Well, what part is progressive? I don't think she's remotely progressive. Not remotely.
Who is your favorite alternative?
Of course. It's here, I'm not going to make news. Elizabeth Warren. I mean, if she'd get into the race, I think she'd have an excellent chance of winning. I might even say that she's a favorite if she got into the race. Everything's, you can't beat Hillary. How can they say that? She got beat in 2008 in the same exact way. You'd have to defy facts to say that Hillary Clinton is inevitable. She's basically making the same mistake today that she made in 2008. She's going to the Democratic primary, taking it for granted. She's taking all these center-right positions and saying, oh, I would have done more war in Syria earlier. That's not a progressive position. And by the way, if you had, you probably would have helped ISIS, who was fighting against Bashar Assad.
All that being said, how come? Why hasn't Senator Warren gotten into the race, do you think?
Yeah, look, I can't get into her head. I don't know her personally, so probably decent human beings feel a little, since she's humble and modest, she probably thinks like, no, am I really going to argue to be the president of the United States? I just got into the Senate. But she's got to be more like Barack Obama, just a flat out, give me a little bit more politician on that. Give me a little bit more ambition on that.
Before we get to calls, let's hear from Hillary Clinton in New Hampshire earlier this week, or really last week, talking to workers at a small furniture factory. Here's a look.
American worker productivity has continued to go up. American workers work longer and harder and more productively than the vast majority of workers anywhere in the world. But it's been very difficult to turn that increased productivity into increased wages and increased benefits. And in some cases where you have small companies, the margin's just too thin. It's really hard to do that. In some places where you have big companies, they just choose not to. They'd rather do stock buybacks than increase the wages and salaries of the people who've actually contributed to the productivity and the profits. So I think there has to be a look at the range of different kinds of companies, because some companies have the cash and they make decisions that leave out their workers, and some people are trying just to keep the doors open and the work coming and be successful and stay afloat.
Wages, salaries, success. What do you make of what you said?
That sounds great. My real question to her, and I hope reporters ask her, is yes, but what are you going to do about it? Because the reality is she has no policies that would affect any change along those lines. Are you going to close the corporate tax loopholes that lead to some of that inequality? And, President Obama says, the Republicans say, sure, if we cut corporate taxes. No, there's no need to give further tax cuts to corporations that actually widens their advantage. Just get rid of the loopholes. And by the way, the American people would love you. They're dying for a populist candidate. This is good kind of talk, but you got to back it up. What in the world are you going to do about it? And the reality is she's not going to do anything. She's never done anything in her career to go after corporations or to affect change on income inequality.
First call for our guest, Cenk Uygur, host of the Young Turks, Franklin, Tennessee. Democratic caller, Mary. Hey, Mary.
Hi, Paul. I'm so glad you're hosting today with Cenk. I sure do miss that guy. I wish that everyone would pay a little more attention to Bernie Sanders. Man, that guy, if you listen to him, he says everything. The solutions, the problems. Hillary is just another one of the establishments. Thank you so much for letting me talk to my dear Cenk. Bye.
Thanks for calling. Let me add to that this NBC News headline, and basically says, why aren't progressives excited about Bernie Sanders in 2016? How do you feel about him?
I think Senator Sanders is right on most issues. I think he's terrific. I wish we lived in a country where he had a better chance at the White House. The reality is, it's not that progressives aren't excited, it's that the mainstream media so thoroughly dismisses Bernie Sanders that it's hard for him to break through. The great thing about a presidential race is you get a lot of free media, but I'm not sure that Bernie Sanders would get that same kind of free press that others would.
Let's go to Edmund in Dorset, Vermont, independent caller. Hey there. Edmund, you there? Let's get past Edmund and try Roger in Shahola, Pennsylvania, Democratic caller. Roger, are you there?
Yes, hi.
Good morning.
First, I'd like to say a side comment about Elizabeth Warren. I'm a huge supporter. I would support her, but I don't think she could win at the national level. Two, I just want to make a statement that Adolf Hitler got elected through the democratic process. And then after World War II, they decided that they have to put rules and regulations on the democratic process, so that can't happen again. And they came up with the equal time laws. And Ronald Reagan got rid of, and Newt Gingrich got rid of those equal time laws. And that's the quandary that this country is in right now. Because of that, I seem to be the only one that really seems to realize that. And there has to be some sort of rule and regulation on the freedom of the press to stop people from being brainwashed. And Democrats are brainwashed, Republicans are brainwashed, and that's the quandary that the country is in now. But that's basically what I want to say. Thank you.
Yeah, first of all, absolutely Elizabeth Warren can win a national election. There's absolutely no reason to believe that. In fact, look at how Dave Brat beat Eric Cantor in his race. I mean, it's the first time that a sitting House Majority Leader has ever lost in American history. Dave Brat did it by not saying that I'm going to be more conservative or I'm going to give more advantages and tax cuts to the corporations. He did it by doing the reverse. He said, I'm going to go after the big banks. He ran a really populist campaign. Populist campaigns work. Look at the name. It is popular by definition. And Elizabeth Warren is incredibly smart and can run that in a balanced way. Now, to your point about other kind of balance where both sides have equal say. I prefer to get money out of politics and have public financing of elections. If you have public financing of elections, we sign their checks, they work for us, and that way you have an even playing field. Both sides have the same amount of money. Let's have a real battle of ideas, not a battle of who's getting bribed more than the other side.
One of those battle of ideas has to do with trade. Let me bring trade into all of this because Senator Warren and the president have actually had a good amount of back and forth lately. Let's see the president first in a recent interview with MSNBC talking about some of the criticism that his trade plan is getting from people like Senator Warren.
I love Elizabeth. We're allies on a whole host of issues, but she's wrong on this. And let me be very clear about my views on trade generally and why this is so important. I'm not somebody who believes in trade just for trade's sake. I come from a state, Illinois, that was devastated by the loss of manufacturing in many small towns. I think that we had a stretch of a couple of decades where, in part because of globalization, you had manufacturing moving to other places in search of low wages, no environmental standards, no labor standards. So trade deals haven't always worked for us. But what I've also always believed is that it's important for us to be able to export our goods to make sure our businesses are competitive. That's good for American workers. That's good for American businesses. It's good for America's small business. So when I came into office, I said, what kind of trade deal would I like to see? How would we revamp how we've done trade to make it work for America? And we know that we'd have strong, enforceable labor standards for other countries that we trade with. We'd have strong environmental standards with the countries that we trade with. We'd make sure that we have access to their markets just like they've got access to ours, so that it was fair and reciprocal. And we decided to start trying to craft a new kind of trade deal in the largest market in the world, because 95% of customers for U.S. businesses is going to be outside of the United States. And if we want to compete and create jobs here in the United States, we got to be there.
And Cenk Uygur, with that comes this headline today. Warren to Obama, stop making untrue trade claims. This is from the Hill publication, and they write that Senator Warren told the president on Saturday he was making untrue claims about his opponents, including herself. The feud between Obama and the left continued Saturday when Warren and Senator Sherrod Brown called on the president to immediately declassify the negotiating terms of a pending trade deal with a host of nations known as the Trans-Pacific Partnership. What do you make of this back and forth, this supposed feud?
Yeah, well, no, I think it's a real feud, and it's really based on policy and not on personality. So this is, in some ways, politics at its best. When you've got two opposing sides, it's a real substantive issue, and they're battling it out. I'm on Elizabeth Warren's side, and again, not based on personality, but on the facts. It is a fact that the Trans-Pacific Partnership is being negotiated in secret. If President Obama claims otherwise, it's almost a bald-faced lie. I say almost just out of respect, but I really don't know what the almost part is. It's obviously secret. If it's not secret, why doesn't he just show it to us? He can't show it to us because it's secret. And second of all, conservatives should hate every part of this deal. One, it gives away our national sovereignty, so multinational corporations can take us to a world court to get rid of our environmental regulations. So they can perhaps put toxins in the rivers and the drinking waters in Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas, and you can't do a damn thing about it in your state. You're going to have to go to a world court, and then you're going to give fast-track authority, extra executive authority to President Obama. Yet the Republicans want to do it. Why? Because they don't believe in their ideology. They believe in crony capitalism. So it's a giant giveaway to multinational corporations or their top donors. We have to wake up to the realities. They don't work for us. They work for their donors. And by the way, in that same Princeton study, special interests had a direct correlation to public policy. What if we're going to wake up that we don't own this country anymore? They do. And we got to take it back.
Zed is calling from Southwest Harbor, Maine. Democratic caller for Cenk Uygur. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Cenk. It is a pleasure to be able to speak with you. I've been following the Young Turks for many years.
Thank you.
I would like to ask you how you feel about the future influence of television advertising. DVRs are very common. People are skipping the commercials. People are watching their programming through the internet and bypassing television advertising that way. And if television advertising ceases to become a major influence, how does that affect how the campaign financing will go forward and the money will influence the politics?
So that's a great question, Zed. It has some positive and some possibly negative ramifications. So let me explain. First off, people are always wondering why the mainstream media, the major cable news outlets, don't give you the heart of the story, which is how, I mean, if you're covering politics, what are these votes based on? And the reality is, as we've shown over and over again on the Young Turks, they're based on what the donors want, what the lobbyists want. And in fact, as I've been saying over and over again, a Princeton study over 20 years shows that to be an absolute fact. So why do they never say it on television? Because an enormous part of television's revenue stream is the money in politics. They spend that money on television ads. So television is not going to tell you the truth because they're not invested in that. They're invested in the exact opposite direction. Okay, now that's talking about the mainstream guys who run on advertising. The downside of the internet getting so strong and so much of the viewers going there is that eventually they'll figure out they got to go put ads in digital space. And when they do, we have to make sure we don't get corrupted because money is a powerful, powerful weapon and tool. So when that pours into the digital side as it is beginning to now, we have to be inordinately careful not to be swayed in the same way that television has.
On to Plano, Texas, independent caller named James. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
What would you like to say?
My question is that what three statutory changes would be the most important to end the corruption that he described earlier?
So, great question, but honestly, I don't think statutory is the way to go here. I think you need an amendment, because if you pass any statutes, the Supreme Court can just come in and say, no, money doesn't corrupt politics. It doesn't even give the appearance of corruption. That's what the current Supreme Court says. So you must get an amendment to go above the Supreme Court. We have a whole organization dedicated to this. I started a PAC called Wolf-Pac to chase down and hunt down all other PACs and end them, okay? It's wolf-pac.com is the website. PAC, of course, wolf-pac.com. And the whole point is you can go around Congress. You don't need this corrupt Congress. You go to the states, you ask for a convention to get an amendment. That way, Congress is irrelevant, and you get an amendment to get all money out of politics. We can fix the system. We will fix the system, but you've got to be bold and strong and go in that direction. I believe not in small little changes, but in a big change.
Our guest is Cenk Uygur, who is host and founder of the Young Turks. He's CEO of the TYT Network, which has over 30 affiliated channels, and he is founder, as he said, of the Wolf-Pac. How'd you get involved in all this?
So I used to be a lawyer, hated it, and then I did, based on a friend's suggestion, a show at a local cable access right out here in Arlington, Virginia. After the first show, which I think most people found deathly dull, I walked off the set thinking, I love this. I'm going to do this the rest of my life. And then that got me started. Then I went into radio, I went into TV, and then we did, 13 years ago, we started the Young Turks. That was on Sirius Satellite Radio. And then 10 years ago, we started as online video. We're actually the longest running daily stream on the web. So no one's had a stream that's running live every day as long as we have. And so once I got to online video, and we saw the explosion in growth, first on YouTube, like I said earlier, now on Facebook, Hulu, Roku, Pluto, all these outlets, we knew that we had found a better way of reaching the audience. We got rid of the gatekeepers. All my life I've had to deal with program directors in radio and TV that didn't know a thing about how to actually reach an audience. They said, hey kid, what would you know? I said, well, let me try it on my own and let's see what happens. And it turns out now we're at overall lifetime views online is over 2.5 billion views. So apparently we had a bit of a winning formula. We didn't know what we were talking about. And by the way, the winning formula I share with everybody. Be honest with your audience. I know it sounds overly simplistic, but it's not. If you're honest with your audience and you serve them rather than advertisers, corporate parents, politicians, powerful people, they recognize it and they flock to you.
What's your goal for the role that the progressives should have in 2016? How forceful can they really be?
I think they've got to be as forceful as possible, starting immediately. This whole presumption that Hillary Clinton is going to walk in the primaries is a terrible idea. The whole point of a primary is to have a real battle of ideas within the party. After the primary, it gets too late, because then they will scream, well, what are you going to do? You want a Republican in office? And they're right about that. If you give me a choice between Hillary Clinton and a maniac like Ted Cruz, of course I'm going to choose Hillary Clinton. And I think that there is a real difference between Hillary Clinton and Ted Cruz. Now, having said that, get a real progressive in the primaries. That's the point of the primaries. Don't complain later. Start right now. And so you push for real trade deals, not trade deals that give away our sovereignty, that don't strip us of our rights to have environmental laws, labor laws, let alone getting money out of politics.
Let me get another call in, James. Tim, I'm sorry. Tim from New England. Tim, are you there?
Hello, Tim calling from Bristol, England. I'm on the air.
Oh, you're from England. Go ahead, Tim.
Hi, I've been following with interest Cenk's debate with Sam Harris on the internet recently. Where I am, we're just 3 hours up the road from Paris, where we've had the Charlie Hebdo attacks recently. My question is, what should the progressives' attitude be towards the relationship between the state and religion, and have we got the balance right when it comes to religious expression? Where should the balance be struck?
Yeah. So this is an interesting story. I had a debate with Sam Harris on our show that lasted 3 hours with no commercial breaks. And in the old days in television, they would have said, "You're mental, don't do that." No, nobody will watch. Over 850,000 people have watched online. So it's a testament to, if you do things right, you trust the audience that they're smart, they will actually come. So now to the heart of the question of what you're asking. Look, I'm an agnostic. And so Sam and I actually agree on at least 90% of the issues. And I think church should be nowhere near state. I always ask people who think that they should be, which church? Lutheran, Methodist, Catholic, Protestant? Which denomination should rule us all? No. In order to protect both religion and the state, it needs to be completely and utterly separate. There are radical Muslims in the world who want to take over states. We've seen the destruction that sows. But we have radical Christians in this country who believe in things like Armageddon and that Jesus is going to return. Michelle Bachmann talked about it last week. She was briefly leading among the Republicans last time around in 2012 as their candidate. There's a significant portion of this country and a significant portion of people that are watching right now who believe it would be fantastic if we had Armageddon, where almost everybody in the world died and their beloved Jesus came back, the Prince of Peace. They don't recognize the irony and the lunacy of that statement. They would like to make that happen. We've got to make sure we stop them.
Kevin, calling now from Dubuque, Iowa. Democratic caller. Welcome, Kevin.
Hey, thank you for taking my call. Love the Young Turks. And I heard you mention Ted Cruz as a Republican. Well, the reason I love the Young Turks is because you put the conservative news channels kind of to their points, and stuff that you basically put them out on their what I want to say, maybe fibs or exaggerations and stuff. But getting back to Ted Cruz, is who do you think is going to be the front runner in the Republicans? And since 2014, the Democrats didn't go out and vote. Do you think whoever's going to be the front runner in the Democrats, do you think they're going to get around their candidate and hopefully get their candidate back maybe in the White House, or do you think a Republican is going to get in the White House?
All right, thanks. So everybody thinks that Jeb Bush is the front runner. He's never led in any poll. I don't believe he is the front runner. They're making a mistake that's understandable. 95% of the time in Congress, the person with more money wins. So this is the heart of the problem I've been talking about all show, right? But in the case of the presidential race, it's actually a really interesting exception to the rule, because you have so much free media covering the presidential race that money that Jeb Bush is going to raise, that's going to be more than the others, is not going to be as big a factor. It's not going to be as decisive. Jeb Bush excites exactly 0 Republicans in the country. So, and I think after Mitt Romney, they're exhausted with picking the same old establishment Republican. Now, look, I actually think that Jeb Bush is far more sane than the other guys. But if you ask me right now, and it's very tough to call. Last time around, it was much, much easier. But this time, I actually think Rand Paul is the most likely to win. I know that that's somewhat bold, and I know that he's got his huge downsides in terms of politics are concerned, let alone policy, right? But if you ask me, as you just did, I think he's got a better chance. On the Democratic side, for Christ's sake, somebody run. Everybody run. Run against Hillary Clinton. Of course you can beat her. Barack Obama beat her with the same exact strategy. Go left, go populist, tell people you're actually going to do something about income inequality in the banks, and they will vote for you. Hillary Clinton, they know for a fact, will not do any of that. They have not represented change for decades, the Clinton family.
Speaking of Congress and the Clintons, Photo Dude writes at Twitter that this is all about Congress. Clinton, they write, can state specific plans on what she'll do. Reality is that you can't accomplish any agenda without Congress. Campaigns are flat promises. But what do you make of that point? You can't do anything without Congress on your side.
You know what would be lovely? If the President of the United States tried. So this is an excuse they make for Barack Obama all the time. Congress. Okay. No, I'm not unaware of Congress is blocking him. Of course they're blocking him. Anybody can see that, right? But I think it makes an enormous difference if you put bold effort into things. For example, President Obama recognizes that marijuana has positive health effects, is less dangerous than alcohol. He used marijuana when he was younger. It didn't ruin his life because he didn't happen to get arrested like so many, like millions of Americans have. So what are you going to do about it? Oh, nothing. I can't do anything. Of course you can. You're the most powerful person on earth. It'd be nice to get a little effort out of you. I mean, you might consider that a small issue, although, again, millions of people have been unjustly imprisoned throughout the country, so I don't think it is a small issue. But that's just an example of the things that President Obama and Hillary Clinton tell us over and over again. Oh, I can't do anything. Oh, the Republicans twisted my arm. No, I can't try to increase taxes on the rich a little more, right? You know that the Bush tax cuts, people forget about this. They think Obama raised taxes on the rich. He only increased taxes by about 6% when you talk about the overall, but 6%. But 94% of Bush's tax cuts got made permanent under Obama. They were not permanent under Bush. They're now permanent. 94% of them because of President Obama. That's what we talk about when we say he's not a real progressive.
You said earlier somebody run against Mrs. Clinton, and here's another name to throw on the table. It's Martin O'Malley, the former governor of Maryland, featured in the Washington Post this weekend. They're talking about his political flanking maneuver, that he's causing some headaches for Clinton on the left, and they write that he's using Clinton's closely watched and long anticipated 2016 launch to raise his own profile ahead of his own likely entry. He has seized on specific economic and social policy issues, including same-sex marriage and the international trade deal. And this is a bid to raise questions about Clinton's liberal bona fides. The attacks, some more thinly veiled than others, have forced Clinton to explain herself on a number of difficult topics, which was not part of her plan for a gradual rollout of her campaign. First of all, what do you think of Martin O'Malley and that kind of strategy?
God bless. It is definitely the right strategy. I'm not convinced that Martin O'Malley is the populist progressive candidate that we're looking for, but I like that he's making that effort. I like the issues that he's bringing up. I want as many choices as possible. I don't know why Brian Schweitzer stepped away. He's got to get back in. He's a really interesting governor out of Montana that brings up a lot of these issues. Jim Webb is an interesting person. He's a little bit more right on some of the issues, but at least he's earnest, he's honest, and he's in some ways populist. Obviously, Warren, Sanders, Grayson, come on, let's have a real debate in the country.
Chuck, St. Mary's, Ohio, Democrat for Cenk Uygur. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Cenk. Good morning, Peter. How are you guys doing this morning?
Morning.
Great. Hey, Cenk, I want to ask you about the power that the right has and the lack of backbone on the left. I tell you, MSNBC is a weak substitute for progressive political part. Fox has got their 24-hour machine out there. Man, where is the T. Goldmans of our time? I mean, you, Ed Schultz, you're the only two guys I know out there that are got any kind of strength of voice in the population. What are your thoughts on that? Thanks.
Thank you. Look, it's not an accident that strong voices get weeded out of the national conversation on television. If you got a strong voice saying get money out of politics, that could cost the TV stations billions of dollars. They're not interested in that voice. It's not an accident. So it happens gradually over a period of time. In my case, I had a very direct conversation where I was told to be more like the establishment. So that was as clear as it could be. But the reality is, you shouldn't worry about it at all. Look, TV is dying. Right now, the average age of the CNN audience is 63 years old. The average age of a Fox News viewer is 68 years old. The average age of a Bill O'Reilly viewer is 72 years old. The guy is doing a show out of a senior citizen center. Whereas out of for the Young Turks online, I told you earlier, 120 million views a month, 40 million unique viewers a month, and 78% of them are under the age of 35. We have the young. As somebody in LA in the industry told me, look, we decided the Young Turks is very important because none of our kids watch broadcast news, and none of them ever will. They watch online news. That's us. So don't worry. The cavalry is here. We have strong progressive voices, and they are roaring online.
As you talk about young voices, Marco Rubio's featured here at Fusion.net. Why Marco Rubio, it says, might actually have a chance with young voters. Let's talk about young voters then. What's the message for them to get them out to vote, and how do you see them shaping the race in 2016?
I'm always amused when I think Republicans are going to energize young voters with like, hey guys, let's do more corporate tax cuts. Like, hey, everybody stop the rally going on at your tailgates or whatever. We got to go help the rich. Okay, so I know that it works with a certain percentage of the population because of enormous brainwashing and propaganda, where they were born Republican, that's their family lineage, etc. So it's not like no young voter ever votes for Republican. But how do you get young voters energized? They're trying to block young voters, literally across the country. The voter ID laws are, yes, they're targeted at minorities a lot, but they're also targeted at students, because a lot of students don't have in-state ID, and so they're not allowed to vote. That's not an accident. The Republicans don't want them to vote because most young voters go Democrat, because most young voters are not part of the establishment. They don't have the money, the power, and the privilege to protect yet. So they don't want them voting. So the idea that Marco Rubio is going to energize young voters because he looks like a child is amusing to me.
Let's go to John, Columbus, Ohio, for Cenk Uygur, Democratic caller. Thanks for calling, John.
Yeah, I'd like to get your guests or the Young Turks' opinion on the problem with gerrymandered districts out here in Ohio. It happens. Republicans have managed to get control of things, and Democrats can't get their foot in the door of the House of Representatives, the state legislature. But it's hard to figure out, and of course, other states, it may be the Democrats, but it loses everyone's confidence in the system. What's your opinion on what's the answer to this?
Right. So you're exactly right to point that out. Gerrymandering is an outrage, and you're also right that it's outrageous if it benefits Republicans. It's outrageous if it benefits Democrats. Instead of the voters picking their representatives, the representatives or the politicians in this case pick their voters. Okay, I would like to carve out this particular insane district because I know I have a better chance of winning that. Of course we shouldn't allow that. Now the reality is, unfortunately, I don't want to sound like a broken record, because the problem is I started Wolf-Pac because I saw that every issue leads back to this. Until you get the money out of politics, you can't solve the gerrymandering issue. If you could solve the gerrymandering issue today, if I thought that was a realistic opportunity, I would fight like hell for it, right? But once you get an amendment to get money out of politics, as we're trying to do with Wolf-Pac, well, then you open up the whole world. I mean, people think that the money and the power has always ruled the country. That's actually not true. From FDR to 1978, in domestic policy, we got Social Security, Medicare. These are all enormously popular programs. Medicaid. We got the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act. Ralph Nader got Richard Nixon to pass the EPA and OSHA. Progressives were super strong in this country because at that point, voters mattered. Now, in a system like that actually existed in this country, we could end gerrymandering of districts, but you got to get the money out first. Otherwise, you can't win on any of these issues because they drown you in money.
And let's go to Rex in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, independent caller. Hey, Rex.
Yes, back to TPP. I'm trying to form an opinion on it. And what's bewildered me here somewhat, and I don't know if I pronounced your name right, Cenk. I hope I pronounced it halfway correct. Say it again.
Cenk. Well, yeah, it's Cenk. In Turkish, the C is pronounced like a J, so that's why it's Cenk. I know it's a hard name. Don't sweat it.
Okay, no problem. Anyway, what I'm getting at here, or what I'm trying to determine, you were talking about the secret negotiations, and it's all secret, and you're not the only one I've heard this from. Yet, if it's secret, I was wondering how you got information that you were saying that the corporations would have to be sued in the world court. In other words, that's supposedly a part of the negotiation there, but you're saying the negotiation secret. So I was wondering where you got your information about a secret negotiation.
So that's a great and logical question. The answer is that we got it through leaks. And so this is what they don't want. And this is amazing. And this part, you don't have to rely on leaks or anything along those lines. What we know is corporations are allowed to see the negotiations. But for a long time, our representatives were not allowed to see the negotiations. Now, us American people, we're not allowed to see that at all, okay? We only get the information that we have through leaks. And even the congressmen and the senators, they cannot bring staffers with them. They can't take notes. They just look at it and then try to memorize it and then leave the room, okay? And that's only after they absolutely demanded that right. Whereas corporate heads can go in and sit there all day long. Now, who do you think runs the country? Isn't that amazing that our representatives can barely look at the document? We can't, but corporations can look at it all they like. That's because at this point, because of the way we've structured our politics, they run the country. You got to get used to that fact so that we can change that fact. But to your point, like I said, all we know about it is to people who did see the documents in the negotiations telling us in the press.
Just under 10 minutes left with our guests. Want to get your take on foreign policy. How do progressives in general feel about what's happening in the world right now, what the U.S. stance in the world should be?
Yeah, so I agree with Barack Obama's stance before the 2008 election. I'm not against all wars, I'm just against dumb wars. So Afghanistan in the beginning made sense, but if we're going to stay there for decades and decades, it doesn't make sense. Iraq never made any sense. They didn't attack us on 9/11. Look at the Pandora's box we opened there and all the things that flew out, including ISIS. I don't know why other reporters don't take Dick Cheney, Don Rumsfeld, and all those guys to task saying, wait a minute, you don't get to talk about ISIS. We never would have had ISIS if you hadn't attacked Iraq in the first place. Al-Qaeda was not in Iraq, and let alone something worse than Al-Qaeda. You opened up a Pandora's box, you created anarchy, you started a Sunni Shia civil war, and out of that rose these monsters. So we have got to be careful. So yes, from time to time, force is required, but that time should be rare, not all the time. We have the biggest hammer ever built. It's the greatest military the world has ever seen. And because of that, all we see is nails. So Syria, you bomb it. Iraq, you bomb it. Iran probably should bomb it, right? Bomb. Yemen, Pakistan. We apologize because, oh my God, we accidentally killed Westerners because their lives matter. We've been accidentally killing civilians, hundreds of them, perhaps thousands of them in Pakistan. When they were Pakistanis, it didn't matter, right? It does matter. This is how we turn the world against us. So it's not like we don't have the answers. So what are the correct answers? The greatest things we've ever done: set up the United Nations, do the Marshall Plan, rescue our former enemies. We took two countries that were at war with us, that had the Nazis, that did Pearl Harbor, and we turned them into our greatest allies, the two biggest economic powers outside of the United States for decades and decades. How do we do it? By further bombing? No. After we had defeated them, we then helped them. We gave them resources. We were magnanimous. It's not something you do out of kindness. You do it out of practicality because it works.
What do you think about drones? There is a headline in the New York Times today that says there's deep support in Washington for these drone missions, despite everything we're hearing.
Okay. The drones are a tool. It's like saying you're against terrorism. Well, it depends. I mean, what do you characterize as terrorism? Unfortunately, these days, every enemy of ours is called a terrorist, and we're the good guys. On the issue of drones, well, who's your target, and how are you targeting them? So there are personality strikes and signature strikes. So personality strikes are when we know who we're bombing. Signature strikes are we literally do not know who we're bombing. We're doing it based on cell phone information, based on, there was a lot of guns in the area. That's why we hit weddings all the time, because there's a lot of guns at weddings in those neck of the woods. By the way, based on that signal intelligence, we bombed the living hell out of Texas. Okay, there's guns everywhere. They're like, oh, okay, they must be terrorists. So I don't agree with drone strikes where we don't know who we're killing. I don't think that's too much to ask for, that we not do that kind of drone strike.
Jason, Destin, Florida, Democrat. Hello there.
Yes, good morning. I want to know if someone has talked about the sainthood of Puerto Rico, because this is a very hot topic in the island, and even recently Philip Arroyo did a mini documentary about that. I want to know if your guest has an opinion about Puerto Rico and what she should think that the candidates should talk about in the 2060 election.
What do you think should happen there?
That everybody in the 2012 election, there was a question in the election, sainthood, yes or no, and 53% of the residents in the island voted for yes. But Congress has done nothing about it.
Puerto Rico. Okay. Look, that's a tough issue. I have a lot of opinions, as you can tell, about a lot of issues. I'd have to study that one a little bit more, but I know that I was in favor of Puerto Rico deciding their own fate. As you point out, it looks like they might have. So if the next step is for Congress to take action, then I would be in favor of taking that action.
There's a tweet here. Hey, ask him if the press covers up for the president, in your view. Benghazi, IRS, the VA. Why or why not? The role of the press.
So this is really interesting. So it's not like the press is easy on President Obama. You'd be crazy to think that, right? I mean, there's all these attacks, as you point out, all those so-called controversies. But what's interesting is that Fox News, and then hence, unfortunately, a lot of the press follow, attacked the president on things that he didn't actually do. Like the IRS scandal is not a scandal. They targeted liberals just as much as they targeted conservatives. That's what the IRS is supposed to do, audit us. Right? It's a sad day for us, but that's what they do. So that's not a real scandal. So why don't they go after real scandals? The scandal that President Obama is in bed with his donors. The fact that the financial companies were the largest donors to President Obama in 2008, and then he was incredibly soft, continued the bailouts. Why are they complaining about President Obama helping the banks with the bailouts? That's what the Tea Party was started for, right? They're not complaining about that because Republicans also do that. The entire Republican Party is set up to do that. So they ignore the real problems with President Obama, which actually could do real damage to his presidency, because they agree with President Obama on all those issues. So then the press follows along. They say, well, I don't know, Republicans are screaming about IRS and Benghazi, so I guess I got to cover those things, even though I don't really see what the story here is.
Ricardo, Sarasota, Florida, Democrat. Good morning to you.
Hi, Mike.
Morning.
Just watching your program, and I saw Hillary Clinton talk about the salaries in this country. And I think that one of the solutions for salary problem for the very small business and the big business is after a year you work in a place, you will be entitled to part of the profit. I mean, if you are a very small business and you don't make a lot of money, well, your salary is going to stay there. But if you work in a place and the profit is $1 million in the end of the year, you can share some of that with the employees. Because I saw in a lot of places when they got the big meeting, the CEO meet with the employees, say, you are the heart of this company and all this stuff. But in the end, the heart of the company died little by little when the CEO and his group, they called the money and left when something happened like happened 10 years ago.
I got the point. Let's ask our guest.
Yeah, so now, in some ways, what you're asking for has happened in some instances with stock options. So, and some people have gotten quite wealthy if they happen to work at the right company, Facebook, Google, etc. But I think you brought up an interesting point that's related, which is small business versus big business. So they don't have the same interests. Big business has enough money to legally bribe the politicians and crush their competition. Their competition oftentimes is small business. So I don't think there's a constituent in this country that would benefit more from getting money out of politics than small business, because crony capitalism works against them. So there's great entrepreneurs throughout the country, and they all could be helped if we had a clean, honest system where you had a free market system. By the way, the Young Turks is a small business. So, I know how it is to compete against very, very large businesses, and I know there are unfair advantages. So I agree on that front. In terms of helping the employees, there's a lot of different ways to structure that. But I think the German system is really interesting because labor is half their board. So the company has to think about their workers. That's an important constituency. In America, labor is not considered at all on the board. So the board who makes the decisions focuses those decisions on the benefits of the executives rather than the workers.
Let's hear from Joe in Falmouth, Massachusetts. Democratic caller. Hey, Joe.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Cenk, I want to defend Hillary Clinton a little bit. You made a statement that she's never done anything for working people. I don't know who pays for your health insurance, but back in the early 90s, I don't know if you can go back and look at the rates, but insurance rates were going up 10, 11%. In 1994, just by starting the dialogue, the insurance rates went down 2%. Sure, she didn't get the legislation passed, but that gave millions of workers a break. We were going into talk to your employer. Oh yeah, I'll give you a raise, but you got to pay more for your health insurance. So you got to give her a little bit of a break.
Yeah, and this is why I love the dialogue. And this is what we do online. You got to keep me honest. You're right. Now look, it turns out that yes, health insurance rates dipped a little bit, and then they went back up tremendously. But that's not Hillary Clinton's fault. On healthcare, Hillary Clinton did really try, and you have to give her credit for that. And I'm overstating when I say she hasn't done anything progressive, and thank you for correcting that. Of course she's done different progressive things in her life. Is it progressive enough? No, not remotely. Is it center-left? I would argue no. I would argue, based on all of the information about Hillary Clinton, that she's a little center-right. Now, but if you're a little center-right, that means you've still done plenty of progressive things. You've just done more things that, in my opinion, protect the establishment and protect the status quo. Of course, the status quo has been awesome for the Clintons.
What do you make of the shootings in this country, all the news about the police and folks in various cities? It seems we're seeing a headline every day now on something else. What are your thoughts?
I think that there's a problem with the culture of policing in America. So it's severalfold. First of all, they're taught, don't take any risk with your life. Okay, if you got any question at all, shoot first, ask questions later. And that is systemic. It is throughout the country. And I'm sorry, but cops are supposed to take a risk with their life. That's why they're heroes. That's why they get all that hero treatment in the first place. So it's like saying a fireman saying, "What are you, crazy? I'm not going to take a risk with my life. I'm not going to run into that burning building. It's on fire." Yeah, I know, but you're a fireman. So firemen do not say that because that's their job. So cops saying, "What do you want me to do? Take a risk with my life?" Yes, that's the job. I can't have you shooting a 12-year-old in Cleveland within 2 seconds of arriving. I can't have you shooting people within 4 seconds of arriving, a shooting that just happened. I can't have you putting people in a chokehold, and when they say they can't breathe, you don't even treat them as human beings. You don't listen to them, right? And so you need to actually serve the community. Cops, let's be honest. In the current culture of policing in America, serving the community seems like a joke to them. Like I serve this community. And the idea is, no, I'm here to straighten them out, right? Well, when you have an antagonistic attitude like that, and then you're surprised the community doesn't trust you. Look, it's not an easy job. It's not to say that everybody in the community is lovely and they're no, we get it, man. You're going to go into domestic abuse situations that are volatile. You're going to try to go and help people who are being robbed, raped, mugged, etc. So, that's a tough job. We need you to take that responsibility seriously. And right now, I don't think they are.
To Vermont now, Dorset, Vermont, where Tony's calling on the independent line. Hello, Tony.
Good morning. Cenk, it's great to have you back. We miss you terribly. But I think the greatest event that has affected America has been Citizens United, which has given the corporations a greater voice and shut out the average man. Now we have a lot of problems in this country: immigration, healthcare, education, infrastructure. The one solution would be to have public financing of elections. And if that happens, we will remove the lobbyists and the corporate interest. And as Jim Hightower of Texas said, this has become the United States of corporate America.
You're absolutely right about that. Look, when we have a convention to get this amendment to get money out of politics, we're going to accept all ideas. We don't get to decide exactly how it goes down. If you ask me, my favorite version of that amendment involves public financing of all elections across the country. Why? I mean, think about the insane system we've set up, where we allow incredibly rich people, multinational corporations, which are just amoral robots. Let's understand what they are, right? They're not human beings. No actual person in America believes that corporations are human beings. Only politicians believe that because corporations bribe them to believe that, right? So if those guys are writing giant checks to people, does anyone really believe that they're working for us? They're working for the people who write the giant checks for them. They're not getting $1 million for their health. They're not giving $1 million for their health. So if we write the checks, that's what public financing is. People say, oh my God, well, that would cost a lot of money. Are you kidding me? It's a tiny fraction of what they give away in crony capitalism. So the oil subsidies alone are up to $40 billion a year for the most profitable companies in the world. If we did public financing of elections at a fraction of that cost, on oil subsidies alone, it would be well worth the cost. But if you go to a convention, by the way, I just want to be clear about this. Our conservative friends, our libertarian friends, our liberal friends, we would all get to do proposals for how to clean up the corruption. On this one issue of getting money out of politics, we're open to all ideas on that.
That being said, the B word is very much out there, $1 billion. Koch brothers ready to put out $1 billion. We've seen headlines about Hillary Clinton perhaps having a goal to raise it. What does $1 billion mean to this process?
$1 billion means that they're in a race to simply flat out bribe our politicians. We in this town, we got so immersed in how the system currently works that we're having trouble stepping outside and taking a look at it. If you said to anybody, hey, you know what, in another country, in Zimbabwe, in Russia, some rich oligarchs are going to give $1 billion to one party, we would say, look at the corruption. Look at how corrupt the Russians are. They give $1 billion to their politicians. He becomes the president, and then all he does is work for that oligarch. It's obvious in any other context. It's also obvious in this context. They're not giving $1 billion for their health. By the way, also to Hillary Clinton, okay? Also to any of these candidates. It's not because Hillary Clinton's a bad person. It's not necessarily because any of the Republican candidates are bad people. It's that the system, by definition, corrupts you. When you take $1 billion from someone, trust me, that makes a difference, and you work for them. You work for them. You don't work for us.
Let me throw this tweet at you, Mr. Uygur. Do you have an actual political agenda? So far, all I've heard is a tapestry of rage against the machine.
No. We're enormously specific, okay? We there's a lot of progressive groups out there, conservative groups, who talk in generalities, okay? Now, our intention is to get a specific amendment to clean up this politics. So if you ask me, Hillary Clinton versus Barack Obama, yeah, that makes differences on the edges. What makes a giant difference is an amendment that fixes the system, get money out of politics. It's not loose talk. It is very specific. The only generation of Americans that has not amended the Constitution is ours. We're supposed to make it a more perfect union. Let's go get our democracy back. Wolf-Pac.com.
Cenk Uygur is host of the Young Turks and founder and CEO of the TYT Network. Thanks a lot for joining us to talk about progressives and really everything else in politics this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.